When you're on campus at UMass Amherst, you're never far from big buildings. Hundreds of them crowd the university's 1,400 acres, but it hasn't always been this way.
When the campus was first being built, there were literally tiny buildings by today's standards.
Well, obviously it's grown. I mean, the university has expanded. I don't know how many thousands of students there were here 30 years ago, but it's gone from 18,000 to 23 just in the last, 10 years.
As Professor Schreiber and Mr. Woodson point out, UMass hasn't stopped growing since its founding in 1863, which means it's had to do a lot of building. But not everybody has loved every architectural choice that's been made. Buildings like the Fine Arts Center and the Campus Center, built in the 1970s brutalist style, are particularly controversial.
It's ugly.
Yeah, it's not that cute. I know that from aerial view it's supposed to look like a piano. But I don't go to class in a drone, so I'm never going to see it from aerial view.
What bothers me is when it's an ugly building that doesn't make any sense aesthetically.
But though brutalism may not please our modern aesthetics, the Fine Arts Center and the Campus Center do paint a picture of the time they came from.
So it simply was the spirit of the times. So concrete's also a very durable material. It'll last forever if it's maintained. So that probably was part of it, but I think it was much more of an aesthetic decision.
I mean, art follows feeling. That's what movements are. When a general mindset of a society changes, so does the art. So I feel like brutalist architecture probably represented the fact that people probably felt, closed off, and there was probably distrust within a society.
She's right. Brutalist architecture reflected Cold War attitudes and an emphasis on strength and utility. UMass commissioned its brutalist buildings during a time when that style was both functional and aesthetically popular. But lucky for those who hate the concrete, UMass is still trying to stay on the cutting edge for its new designs.
The architecture is really sort of documenting where we were aesthetically and functionally at different periods of history. The UMass administration, which ultimately makes decisions on buildings, has done a good job at sort of keeping at the forefront so that there's a medley of styles.
And this medley makes UMass pretty unique. Nicola Courtwright is the chair of architectural studies at nearby Amherst College. She says the classic, uniform look of Amherst is intentional. For decades, the college would hire the same firm every time it needed a new building.
McKim, Mead and White became the firm that Amherst College kept coming back to. So they did all these brick and white buildings that are called Georgian-looking buildings that you see everywhere here, right? Those were all made by McKim, Mead and White over the decades, really, over a really long time. What they did provide is sort of a unified feeling to the campus. So many of the buildings look like they belong together, they belong on the same campus. But that has a downside because there's a kind of a uniformity that you don't necessarily want. I prefer the progress.
Compared to Amherst, UMass architecture is a portrait of progress. And despite loving to hate certain brutalist eyesores, most of UMass agrees. It's nice to be on a campus where no two corners look the same.
I like it because it makes a big campus and kind of makes it into smaller little communities.
You can look at the campus like you're looking at the rings of trees.
It's a little more creative, like a collage. So you encounter this cool building and then this one that's very old and one that's very modern.
The school is so big, and also there are a lot of people from many different places, from many different preferences coming in to live on this campus. I think that the architecture should reflect that.
So it doesn't bother me at all that it's all mixed up. It's more like sort of jazz improvisation than, a very strict, classical piece.
And so the improvisation continues. The new student union is under construction and set to open in fall 2020 with a modern design different than any other building on campus. It'll be the newest building at the university, until they build a newer one.
I know that Herder is trying to be redone. I know that the Fine Arts Center is trying to be rebuilt. I know that Topman, I think, is trying to be rebuilt as well. And I mean, if you look at the new buildings like the Eisenberg Hub, the Innovation Hub, the Student Center, if you have looked at the plans for the Student Union, they're very, modern looking. I think they reflect the direction that architecture is headed, and I think that the campus is kind of going to go along with that.
Is there a master plan for University of Massachusetts at Amherst? No, there is no master plan. I mean, it's bound to be very, very different from our campus, but that's all to the good.
Master plan or not, UMass is growing fast. Someone can expect to see lots more unique buildings popping up around campus, adding to the architectural collage.